Today on Hearts of Heroes, a baby is born in the middle of one of the coldest storms in Texas history.
We had nurses that had been here for days on end. We were running out of food.
And it's going to take a team from 2 different hospitals to save the life of this fragile little girl.
You put a baby like this into that environment, and their survival are certainly less than 5%.
Plus, an emergency evacuation as a Northern California wildfire rages.
It's like out of a movie. You can't even describe it.
Just like that, heroes are on the way to help get you to safety.
In February of 2021, there was an historic outbreak of sub-freezing temperatures and winter weather that gripped most of Texas. Power was out, water was out, heat was out. It was kind of chaos, and it was frightening, especially for a mom who went into premature labor during the storm.
Despite the challenges the storm presented, the staff of 2 different hospitals joined forces to save the life of her newborn, a little girl born prematurely amidst the crisis.
If you're looking to escape the hustle and bustle of Austin, Texas, you can head 50 miles down Highway 71 to beautiful Marble Falls. This laid-back city is located in hill country right along the winding Colorado River. Here, the weather can be a little bit of everything, but it's generally far from cold. Their average winter temperature is just 55.
Winters are mild. I feel like 70's freezing.
But that all changed in February of 2021. An historic blast of cold, snow, and ice shut down much of Texas. And a lot of folks did not have heat or power for days.
All of Texas experienced a record-breaking winter storm. Now, for this part of the country, that's a very, very rare event, and not something that we have the infrastructure or the logistics to be able to normally handle.
Even though they had backup generators, the storm and the power outages were super challenging for the staff of Baylor Scott and White Hospital.
We had nurses that had been here for days on end. We were running out of food. Then our computer system had gone down in the snowstorm, so network-wide, our medical record charting was messed up.
It was a hectic time for the whole staff, but it was about to be even more stressful when a young mother-to-be named Kimberly came in.
Then about 10:30, a little after, Kimberly walks in the door, and that's when our day really started.
Kimberly was complaining about feeling labor pains, but it couldn't be. She was only 24 weeks pregnant. This was 4 months before her baby Zaylen was due.
We got the ultrasound on Kimberly's abdomen, and I think it was just like a deer in the headlights for all of us, as Zaylen's little body was already starting to come through a completely dilated cervix.
There was no question about it. Kimberly was in labor, 16 weeks ahead of schedule. Dr. Curtis Copeland was at home when he heard the news.
Nurse Meredith called me and said, "Dr. Copeland, we need you at the hospital. We've got a woman that's at 24 weeks gestational age, is now in labor."
Not only were they in this historic winter storm, but this hospital was not equipped with a neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU.
In a normal situation in a small community hospital like this, we'd call for the NICU transport team to be able to be here. And they'd send a helicopter and a team of providers that would come and, if able to, take mom before the baby was even born over to the hospital that has a specialized NICU.
But they didn't have time, so they just prepped for an emergency delivery. Fortunately, Meredith Schubert, one of the nurses, had previously worked at a NICU in Austin.
We arranged all our emergency supplies that we needed for a preterm delivery, and we walked through all the steps that we were going to take care of Zaylen once she was born, and said a quick prayer, and I really felt, a huge sense of peace come over me at that point.
The team started the delivery. In the best situation, a baby born this prematurely only has a 50-50 chance of survival, but those odds drop dramatically without specialized care.
You put a baby like this into that environment, and their survival are certainly less than 5%. So it's a very critical situation. So it's hard to overstate what a serious situation it is.
Without specialized medication and equipment, the team knew they would need to get the baby to a neonatal intensive care unit immediately after the delivery.
Boom. baby Zaylen was born, and then the real action started.
The delivery went as well as possible, but they were certainly not out of the woods. Coming up, a courageous medical team comes to the rescue.
It really wasn't a decision. There was a baby out there, there was a mother out there that needed help.
But first, this safety tip.
Winter storms can knock out power for days at a time. And in most cases, it's more dangerous to travel than it is to stay put.
Stock up on supplies before a storm so you do not risk needing to leave. We recommend having non-perishable food, water, batteries, and warm clothing on hand.
So if you can, stay home, stay warm, and most importantly, stay safe.
In February of 2021, Texas was pummeled by an epic winter storm. This historic storm covered much of the state in snow and ice, sent temperatures plummeting sub-freezing, and knocked out power to millions. In the middle of one of the worst days of the storm, doctors and nurses in Marble Falls had to deliver a baby 4 months premature.
You got to remember that at 24 weeks gestational age, median survival, even at a top NICU, is only around 50% survival. And so it's even more crucial in a smaller community setting that we try to get the baby to a NICU level of care.
With the storm raging and roads iced over, there was really no way to transport Zaylen and her mom to a neonatal ICU facility. With few options, they got in touch with Dell Children's Hospital in Austin, home to one of the top NICUs in the area.
We found out that none of the other transport services in Texas were going.
So we immediately started making phone calls to anybody who could get out. After checking with all our resources, our ambulances were grounded, Starflight was grounded at the time, trying to find some way, if nothing else, just to get people out there, and we weren't being successful.
With no way to transport the baby safely, Dr. John Lloyd and nurses Nicole Patton and Kelly Klaus decided that they would travel to baby Zaylen.
It really wasn't a decision. It was just obvious. There was a baby out there, there was a mother out there that needed help, and we were gonna exercise any and all means to try and take care of that patient and the family.
I knew right away, being a mom myself, there wasn't a choice in that. If I were told that my itty bitty, very premature baby could not be helped, I don't know what I would do.
These doctors and nurses take an oath to save people's lives, and they will go above and beyond to keep that promise.
After coordinating with the staff from Marble Falls, they loaded up Dr. Lloyd's SUV and hit the road.
We packed up half the hospital, packed up meds, packed up supplies, everything we could think of that this poor baby may need.
What's usually a 45-minute drive took over 2 hours. But once they finally made it, everybody was beyond pleased to see them.
Have you ever had little children when you walk in the house and they're really excited to see you and they run and jump and meet you at the door? It was sort of like that.
Throughout the night, the team of specialists worked to get baby Zaylen stabilized.
We knew that we needed to put in lines for the baby right away to make sure that she's getting the nutrition and keep her hydrated.
But they still had to figure out how to get this tiny baby to a proper NICU. Ambulances couldn't safely make the trip on the icy roads. The only way out was to fly. They called shock trauma air rescue, or star flights.
They had a little window in the weather, and the pilot felt like he could safely get out there and then get back.
Baby Zaylen and mom Kimberly were helicoptered to Dell Children's Hospital in Austin. Zaylen would have to stay in the NICU for months, but today, she is happy, healthy, and at home with Kimberly.
She's met all her milestones ahead of time, and she's met them and done it ahead of target. She's an amazing little creature.
And it's all thanks to 2 dedicated teams from 2 different hospitals who worked together to save baby Zaylen's life.
It was a wonderful experience just collaborating together like that. It got back to what healthcare is supposed to be.
I couldn't have asked for a better team to do it with. I've learned so much from this, and honestly, that little girl will have a piece of my heart for the rest of my life, for sure.
Coming up, that same winter storm didn't stop at Austin. It threatened history in Dallas.
So we get there, water's just running out the building.
And later, a juvenile detention center sits right in the path of a massive wildfire.
We didn't really have a plan in place, so it's a little bit overwhelming.
Most Texans will never forget February of 2021. It was epic. It was super cold. They had the snow, they had the ice. Dallas, for example, had sub-freezing temperatures for more than 5 days.
With the power grid crippled, frozen water lines began bursting. For the historic Hall of State in Dallas, this put both the iconic building as well as the famous documents stored there in grave danger.
Right in the center of Dallas, you'll find a gorgeous, sprawling plaza known as State Park, home to the Texas State Fair. The centerpiece of the park is the Hall of State, which was built in 1935 in celebration of the Texas Centennial.
In the Hall of State, the building we're in, was formerly called the State of Texas building, because this is where people came to learn about the state of Texas.
The Hall of State is home to everything Texas, from old maps to artifacts to incredible exhibits telling the rich history of the Lone Star State.
You know, this is the largest diorama like this that talks about the Battle of the Alamo. 20 years of research for the gentleman that made it.
But in February of 2021, this treasure trove of history was put in danger when temperatures plummeted below zero and stayed there for 5 days. To conserve energy, the city implemented rolling blackouts where they intermittently turn off the electricity.
When you have heaters for the pipes, but the heaters are plugged in and the electricity goes off, now your heaters aren't working. And with the temperatures that we had, the pipes froze pretty quickly.
Which is exactly what happened that frigid morning, putting these priceless objects at risk.
We had water running down the stairs, and then there was probably about 6 inches of water outside of the auditorium, and it was kind of like a little raging river.
The water flowed down to the basement, saturating hundreds of irreplaceable books and documents. They immediately called the Dallas Fire Department.
So we get there, water's just running out the building and to the street towards us. Get inside the building, and there's water everywhere. The main thing was to find the source and get it cut off. Eventually, I made my way up to the attic, and that's where we found a busted pipe, and it was gone.
Firemen were able to shut off the water, but the damage had already been done. Our sponsor, Belfour Property Restoration, was called in to see if there was any way to save these precious items.
The common denominator with documents is usually water damage, so we have to make sure that we get the documents frozen as quickly as possible. That's what stops the damage. It's the liquid state of water that causes damage. It'll allow the paper to deteriorate. It will allow mold to grow. So the first step is to get the documents packed and frozen.
The team started collecting everything that might have taken on water. They were then rushed to the Belfour facility in Fort Worth.
We got about 500 boxes of documents and 100 flat file drawers or so. So there were, it's fairly large quantity of material.
Once the items are frozen, they have to go through a special process called freeze drying to thaw them out. The frozen documents are placed in a special chamber that pulls moisture from paper by turning ice directly into vapor.
The process is very meticulous, but fortunately for the Dallas Historical Society, these irreplaceable documents were saved.
We went out to Fort Worth to their facilities, looked at our stuff, and it was nice to see these items, saved, basically, because it was done so quickly.
The entire building restoration took about a month, just in time to start planning for the annual state fair. Coming up, a juvenile detention center in California is in the path of a fast-moving wildfire.
And there was like flames just almost like a jet engine just, coming out of the storm drain.
But first, this safety tip.
Residential blazes account for over 25% of reported fires. Would you be prepared during a fire emergency?
Take note of any safe exits in your home so you're not caught off guard in the event of a fire. And designate a space to meet outside where everyone can be accounted for.
Knowing your exit strategy before a fire strikes can help save your life.
The glass fire in Napa Valley in September of 2020 took out nearly 70,000 acres of land and 1,500 structures, and that included homes.
Evacuating people from their homes was of prime importance, and one juvenile detention center located at the foot of the mountains was particularly vulnerable to the fast-approaching fire.
Picturesque Sonoma County is located just north of San Francisco, and situated against its rolling hills and rustic farmlands, you'll find the city of Santa Rosa. While the area is famous for its natural beauty, over the past few years, it's also become known for wildfires.
Santa Rosa's been through a lot in the last 4 years. We had several devastating wildfires that have racked our community, starting with the Tubbs in 2017, the Kincaid fire in 2019, and glass fires in 2020. What we've really seen is the extension of fire season to last almost all year long at this point.
James Wolter is a supervisor at the Sonoma County Juvenile Detention Center outside of Santa Rosa. In 2017, that facility was in the direct path of the Tubbs fire.
In 2017, we had to evacuate. We didn't really have a plan in place, per se, so it's a little bit kind of overwhelming.
Since then, they've implemented a number of new safety precautions.
Having to-go bags, documents ready, kind of whenever there's a red flag warning, you get things ready by the door. It's kind of like second nature now, unfortunately.
When the glass fire broke out in adjacent Napa County in September of 2020, the people of Sonoma County felt they were in no immediate danger.
I didn't really think anything of it other than just kind of keep an eye on it.
But firefighters were on high alert.
We had immediate eyes on it with our camera system, and the city had a conference call within 10 minutes of the announcement of the fire, and so we activated and reacted to it very quickly.
But the staff of the detention center could not have imagined that the fire was heading straight for them.
It felt like any other day. To be honest, it was somewhat of a surprise.
On my way in, one of my coworkers made a joke about evacuating, saying, hopefully we don't have to evacuate tonight. And, I was like, oh, the fire's a ways off.
By evening, the fire had grown increasingly worse.
And then all of a sudden, it was time to be prepared. Various areas were being evacuated or getting the notification.
Our director, Kylie, called and said, hey, you guys, I just got evacuation warning for your area. And I was like, for what fire? And she's like, the fire in Napa County. And then it pretty much was one of those things where it was like, okay, we're gonna go through this again.
James and the staff started getting everyone out.
By each unit, we escorted them down to intake, where the vans were waiting in the vehicle heliport, and then we kind of caravanned over to Solano County Juvenile Hall.
Preparation and planning paid off. They were able to get all the kids to safety.
We were a lot better prepared. It felt more comfortable, unfortunately. It was definitely something where, I felt comfortable and, I could proceed with getting these kids out of here.
But when James and Kylie got back to the center the next day, they were in awe of the damage the fire had done.
Some of the vegetation was on fire. There's a storm drain over behind our back dock, and there was like flames just almost like a jet engine just, coming out of the storm drain.
It's like out of a movie. You can't even describe it. Just ash in the air, it's completely dark, and still seeing flames in certain locations.
While the center didn't take on direct flames, the smoke damage made it uninhabitable. So they called in our sponsor, Belfour Property Restoration.
We definitely had a lot of communication and worked really well together in regards to cleaning up and explaining our needs and listening to the limitations or understanding the time frame.
They immediately got to work.
Even the residual smell of smoke can be traumatizing. It can trigger memories of terrible events like these. Therefore, smoke damage needs to be dealt with to get everyone back to their lives before the disaster happened.
Finally, after a month of being displaced, the staff and the kids were able to return to the center.
We have a gorgeous facility that's well maintained and that we're very proud of. So walking back in that door and having it just light up again is great.
Communities in Sonoma County have taken on a lot when it comes to wildfires, but they've also grown even stronger.
Having the impact of several natural disasters continues to highlight what an amazing community we have and how people come together to really support one another in a time where you can lose absolutely everything that you have.
First responders will always tell you they don't do their job for praise or gratitude.
But if you see one of these heroes on the street, take a moment and say thank you. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. And hey, we appreciate you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.